Classic delayed response. Yeah, okay. No homework. Okay, so this is one of the ones I said we were going to do, being dan l'kaf Zechus. Okay, which we'll translate as judging favorably. Okay, who would like to read the Mishnah? Go ahead. Yeah, parachia.
Our Bailey, people who may have. Okay.
Yeah, so these are just their names.
Right. Guy and on Rashi, she lives in
one of those words was right. Asay is either do or make for yourself. A rav.
Oh, rabbi.
A rabbi, right?
Oh,
yeah, right. Make a rav for yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
And acquire for yourself.
Yep.
The hevei done.
Yeah. So hevei is, I think, rabbinic Hebrew for you should. Okay. So and judge a person. So I'm just going to translate this like the way that we say it in English. Judge every person favorably. Okay. Am I imagining it, or did you guys say that one of the other mishnayos you wanted to do is the one about friendship and what different friendships are? Did anyone say that? All right, because this is
yeah, you're like, what is this
for this one. So if we want, we could do that. Okay, so we're just going to focus on the last clause. Okay, on the judge every person favorably.
What is it?
I mean, I'm saying if you want to do the friendship thing, we could do it, just not today. Okay, right. So that's our usual question here. What, if anything, is the connection between the three clauses? Okay.
What does it mean to judge everyone favorably? Do you mean like invest in them, or just
Okay, good. What does it mean to judge favorably? Okay, let's. Okay, so let's only ask on the third clause this time, just because I think for the sake of simplicity.
I don't know if it's more of a question or it's just not that part of it, but like when they say judge favorably, do you mean like judge it and act upon it like that, or
okay, so I
action
favorably, does this express itself in action or only in your mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. What are the parameters? How far do you have to go to judge someone favorably, or how?
Like, is it better to judge them favorably or not to judge them at all?
Okay. Yeah. So let's put that. Well, this clearly is saying it is better to judge them favorably, but you could ask the question though, is like, why do you have to judge them at all, right? Why not suspend judgment? Okay, good. What else?
I think we don't mean like judge, we mean like, never mind.
I mean, that's going to be dependent on your other question, yeah.
What does it mean, like every?
Yeah, why specify every person, right? Coming to include what?
Iris? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Who's coming? Yeah, like why is it so?
Is there some inside joke about sirens that?
No.
Okay.
I don't get it either.
All right. Okay, go. Yeah. Who is this Mishnah for? Is this derech or derech hayachid? I'm just going to ask it like that. What's a practical question? Well, so okay. You could say this is part of here, but I think this should be a separate question, okay, which is, practically speaking, how, okay, meaning like, let's say we answer question 2 and we say, what does it mean? Well, what if I have a hard time doing it? Like how, and then I think there's at least one more question.
Doesn't like Torah kind of contradict that?
How?
Like if you're in some cases, instead of being like you're innocent until proven guilty, it's like you're guilty until you're proven.
Okay, yeah. So there's actually another mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says that when a judge has the like litigants come before him, like the people who he's judging, they should be like Rashaim in his eyes. Okay, but then when they accept their judgment and they go out, then they should be innocent, you know? So why should they be like Rashaim in the judge's eyes when they're before him?
Like maybe somebody he judges them to the full extent, like when you establish something,
Yeah, so So like the question you're asking, I think that's, you could put that under the what are the parameters, like where does this apply or where doesn't this apply? Yeah. You want to have another question? Why? Okay, right. Well, what is the purpose of this advice? And I feel like, yeah, how is this beneficial? Is it for you, your mitos? Is it for society? Is it because it's like a philosophical idea? You know, because I feel like we don't even ask this question because it's, oh, you're like a nice person if you judge people favorably. They're like, what is the reason? What's the point? Okay, so I have a feeling that what we're going to probably do today, usually we do one of the mafarshim at a time. I think it's going to be better this time around if we do get the facts out. So we'll do Rashi, raise questions on Rashi. Rashi quotes a Gemara. We'll do the Gemara. And then hopefully we'll have time to do the Rambam.
Ooh.
What was that? Yeah. And that was like extremely like not warranted by like the like I thought it was like a crushed bug on the back of it or something like that. Yeah. And then I think we'll have to wait till answers for tomorrow. Okay. All right. So Rashi, ladies, you want to try reading Rashi also? Okay. Yeah.
Until you know.
Berur is like, yeah, clarity is good. Yeah, clarity is good. I said certainty. And I translate, usually odd is until. I translate this as unless, and you'll tell me if that translation makes sense when we do the whole thing. Okay, I think it should be unless, but we'll see. Yeah, what do you say for im latova niskaven im lara'a?
Unless you know he is for good or he is.
Yeah, intention for good and for bad. Yeah, unless you know whether he intended for good or for bad. Okay, go ahead.
So if you do this, you will be judged.
Yeah.
Above.
Yeah, what do you think it means for by above? Yeah, but God. Okay, right. So you will be. I just translated it literally. They will judge you favorably from on high. Okay, so meaning God will judge you for good. Okay.
Is there a mishnah that says this and everyone says that all the time? If you forgive.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a mishnah or just some other.
It's gotta be Davin for. That's something else.
No, but there is something about like God will not forgive you or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did that. Like if the person doesn't come to you the third time, and if they don't come to you.
Yeah, it is related to that, right? To that halacha. Yeah, but I think there's a specific statement that I was thinking of. Yeah. Okay, and then he just says at the end, "Kamoshe meforth b'm." So. Yeah. It's ringing a bell. Okay, now rather than going through the whole Gemara inside, it was so long. Brace yourself. I just copied and pasted the whole English translation, and we'll just read it in English because it's basically 3 examples of Dan L'Kav's and this will. First of all, which of our questions is Rashi answering so far? I forgot to ask.
Why?
Yeah, why seems like the thing that he's emphasizing. So why should you judge someone favorably? It'll benefit you, right? God will judge you favorably. Okay. Is there any other question Rashi's answering?
The parameters.
The parameters, right? Is what is he saying? Say again.
He says until you know.
Yeah. So this is why I translate it as unless instead of until, because I don't understand what until would mean. Judge him until you know. Like, what if you don't know? So I think he's saying like in a case where you know for sure that that this person intended for bad, like then you don't need to judge him favorably. Okay. But if you didn't know that what his intention was, then you should apply this. Does that make sense?
I was thinking like judging them favorably means not passing judgment until you know for sure. Okay,
you could say that also, but I guess like it's going to come out to the same place, right? Because if you did know for sure, then you wouldn't apply this mishnah. If you did know for sure whether they intended for good or for bad, right? So practically, I think it means the same thing. Yeah, so that's why I translate it as unless.
That's why I think it shouldn't be unless, because unless is when you already know.
Yeah, but then wouldn't that come out to the same thing that I was saying? Like, let's say like you are waiting to see, and then once it becomes clear that they did for good or for bad, then you're not applying this mishnah anymore.
Then I would say it's not in the balance to judge favorably.
Yeah.
If it's certain, then you wouldn't even have to say that. Yeah. So until it's like.
Okay, I hear. Yeah. Okay. Either way is fine. I think practically it's going to come down to the same thing, which is that if then you don't need to apply this principle because it doesn't apply. Okay. So let's see from the. Oh yeah, sorry. You just the noise. Okay. Let's read this these long examples here. Okay. This one's kind of complicated. Let's read. All right, go ahead.
The sages taught in Nebraska, and there was an incident involving a certain person who descended from the upper Galilee and was hired to work for a certain homeowner in the south for 3 years.
Okay, so just to make sure that we understand this case here, let's just designate people as examples. So let's say like, let's say Adina Eliana is working for her for 3 years. Okay. From the south. Okay. Southern accent. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
On the eve of the day of atonement, he said to the homeowner, "Give me my wages and I'll go and feed my wife."
Okay, so Eliana get paid for after working for 3 years. Okay, so this is for the entire time, and then you live with them, so you don't.
The homeowner said to him, "I have no money." He said to him, "In that case, give me my wages in the form of produce." He said to him, "I have." The worker said to him, "Give me my wages in the form of land." The homeowner said to him, "I have none." The worker said to him, "Give me my wages in the form of animals." He said to him, "I have none." The worker slung his tools over his shoulder behind him and went to his home in England.
Oh yeah. Now just take a moment to appreciate how severe this is, right?
But he's lying.
So that's what you would think, right? You would think that Adina, in this case, is lying, right? That like, because what would be the motive? Yeah, it's just you don't want to pay.
He obviously has land.
How does he have it? Yeah.
No, because he doesn't have enough work. He gives it to him for his whole.
Yeah, like extra land, like he's or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, right. And then, yeah, exactly, right. And so, and how do you think Eliana's gonna feel? Very upset and like not being able to pay her family. But the story ends happily ever after. Let's go on.
After the festival of Zechus, the homeowner took the workers' wages and along with a burden that required 3 donkeys, 1
laden. Yeah, it means like loaded up with.
And went to the workers' home. After they ate and drank, the homeowner gave them.
So Adina shows up at Zechus, which is which would be kind of lame because then he doesn't get paid for Zechus, but like, and is bringing not only the wages, but okay. So now, what does Eliana ask?
Where'd you get all this?
Yeah, where do you get all this from? Yeah, like, well, yeah, exactly. Okay, so. Oh, so this is just a style of like art scroll type translations, which is that the bold is the literal words, and then like and then the non-bold is like extra words that are added to make it flow. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ayala.
The homeowner said to him, "When you said to me, give me my wages, and I think I'm trying to avoid why did you not suspect me of trying
Right. So now Adina is like asking like, when I told you I couldn't pay you, like, what were you thinking exactly? So now it's going to answer. Go
The
ahead.
worker answered, I said perhaps the opportunity to purchase merchandise.
Yeah, it's just for that.
Inexpensively presented itself, and you purchased it with the money that you owed me, and they're
And it was like, yeah, and then it wasn't just spending your money like on like luxury. It's just like you saw a I asked you. Okay, go ahead.
Homeowner asked, and when you said to me, give me animals, and I said I have no animals, what did you hire to others?
Right. So he has animals, but he had already hired them out.
Homeowner asked, when you said to me, give me the land, and I said I have no land, what did you suspect? The worker answered, I said perhaps the land is leased to others, and you cannot take the land from those.
Yeah, I learned that word today. Lessees. People who you lease to. I would have said leasees, but I guess it's lessees. Yeah.
The homeowner asked, and when you said to me, give me produce, and I said, I have no produce, and what do you suspect me? And the worker answered, I said, perhaps they are not
Tithed, meaning that he hadn't taken like Truma and Meiser from it, so you couldn't, yeah.
And that was why you cannot give them to me. The homeowner asked, and when I said, the blankets,
Yeah, now what does it mean to consecrate your property to heaven?
You designated city.
Yeah, you designate the base mikdash, right? Okay. So what was this word? So now you can read the punchline.
The homeowner said to him, I swear by the temple service that it was so. I had no money available at the my son who did not engage in.
No idea what that means. Okay, so that was just a long example of like the links that you should go to judge favorably. Now I'm going to read through the other two examples really fast. On a similar note, the Gemara relates that the sages taught in early Chassid who redeemed a young Jewish woman from captivity. So saved her from Jewish woman from captivity, which I guess was much more common back then. When they arrived at the inn, he had her lie beneath his feet. Okay, meaning like he's like on the bed and like she's like sleeping at the bottom of the bed. Okay. The next day he descended, I guess from the bed, and immersed himself in a ritual bath in a mikveh to purify himself before Torah study and prayer, and he taught his students. Okay, this conduct could arouse suspicion that the pious man kept the maiden for himself as relations. So in other words, if the guy goes to the mikveh the next day, okay, which in the time of the base mikdash, you're in the time of the base mikdash was to Tara, man had to go to the mikveh also, right? So if the students see the Rav who spent the night with a woman in his bedroom, and then he goes and has the mikveh the next day, they're going to suspect that something went on, right? Okay, so what happens? And the pious man said to his students, we said perhaps there's a student among us whose conduct is not established before the rabbi, and he wanted to make certain that that this student would not inappropriately accost the young woman. Therefore, the rabbi kept the woman close by. So, what is that? What are they assuming? So, right, is like her, and then that would be a danger. So, like, that part you could say is romantic, or like a nice Leah, like, oh, you want to protect her? Okay, no, never mind. All right. He said to them, I was talking to you. That's okay. He said to them, due to the exertion of travel, a seminal mission befell the rabbi, meaning that it didn't have to do with him having intercourse with her. He said to them, I swear by the temple service that it was so, and you, just as you judge me favorably, so may God judge you favorably. Okay, one more example, which is very similar. The sages taught a similar brisa. Once there was a certain matter needed by Torah scholars, they wanted to discuss an issue. The company was kept prominent people of Rome. What is a matron who was, involved in a lot of community service type, projects? So the Talmid Chachamim wanted to discuss something. They said, "Who will go?" Rabbi Yeshua said to them, "I shall go." Rabbi Yeshua and his students went to her. When he arrived, and this is a non-Jewish woman, by the way. Okay, when he arrived with his students at the entrance of their house, he removed his phylacteries at a distance of 4 cubits from the door and entered and locked the door before them. Which one question the Gemara doesn't address is I don't know how he got around yichud issues because
Was that a thing? Wasn't it after-
yeah, but this is in the time of the Gemara, so it was when ritual bath and taught his students. Here too, this was conduct that could arouse suspicion that something improper transpired, right? So again, you got to imagine this. This rabbi goes, takes off his tefillin, goes, locks himself in with her, then goes out and then goes in the mikvah, right? So you could easily suspect that something bad happened. And he said to his students, no, you could, but there's just no reason. There's no reason to. And in fact, he's going to give an example of something else he went in for. And he said to the students, when I removed the, maybe this is not in the time of this isn't the time, but still way after David, to a place of impurity. Therefore, it would have been inappropriate to enter the house with phylacteries. Okay, so that's why he took off his tefillin, because it was impure stuff there. He asked, when I locked the door, matter that must be discussed between him and her not be revealed. Maybe that's how they got around yichud, by the way, is that there are certain cases where people who are involved in the government have certain leniencies that, like, let's say, for example, you're not allowed to cut your Ovdei Avodah Zarah, but if you're in the government and like people who are in governments like have to like have those hairstyles, I think there's like an exemption for that. Well, let's say another example is, what was it? Army might be another example. I'm thinking specifically of government stuff though. Most recent
like the 9 days or like they're shaved.
Yeah, shaving would be an example of that. Another in 2016 is that, like that Ivanka Trump converted Orthodox, right? So there were the Friday, yeah, and so she, Ivanka and Jared were riding in like a motor car to like the inaugural party. Jews like made a big stink about it, of like, oh, she can't really be like, like Shomer Halacha if she's like riding in a car. And then people brought up these arguments that like, if you're part of the administration and like, this is a thing that like there's an expectation for, then like there's certain leniencies, for that. So anyways, so maybe that's how he got around yichud. I don't know, like specifically with yichud, but maybe if it was like a matter of national security. Rabbi Yeshua said, when I descended and immersed in the mikvah, what did you suspect me? They said to him, we said, perhaps a bit of the rabbi's clothes, and the sages decreed the status of a Gentile is like that of a Zav, which is really important. Rabbi Yeshua said to them, I swear by the temple service that it was so. And you, just as you judge favorably, God judge you favorably. So what's the upshot of all? Yeah, exactly, right. It looks very, very, very sketchy and very improbable that this was that this is the case. But then all these cases turned out that the way that they judged was actually what happened. Okay. So any questions on the Rashi? We're going to do Rambam today, but any questions on the Rashi? Rashi, yeah. Yeah, what does it mean specifically? What does it mean that God's going to check if you think of it? You don't have knowledge of with certainty, so then you should judge favorably. But if you did have knowledge, then of course you just judge it based on the facts. God, in an analogous scenario, right? So that's one problem. But what's also the problem saying that God is going to judge you favorably or not, depending on how you judge other people? Okay, that's also true, right? Why is Hashem going to do stuff based on how you do it? But
Also, obviously, you get judged based on your actions.
yeah, right. We hold you get judged based on your actions, right? It's like you get judged for your mitzvahs and your averos based on like how good or bad the mitzvah or the avera is. So, and you judge people favorably. So is God gonna like change the way he judges your murder, stealing, and cheating because it's a problem to say that God's judgment is going to be okay, and this will reward you. No problem with that. But this is saying it's going to affect how God judges you. That's a problem. Okay.
Also, this like whether he intended for good or bad, it seems more it's like
Right, meaning it's Rashi's case is we'll say like the case with the homeowner, right? Is this guy just like avoiding paying me, or does he have a legitimate excuse? You know, and you like you're into being in a way like it's a much broader judgment than a specific action or intent.
I was saying, yeah, further on, but is it saying you should assume their intention was good? You should assume that they were doing the right thing. With the rabbi's case, you're assuming that.
Rashi sounds like it's just good intention. But the fact that Rashi quotes us like, he had a good objective in, right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like so I think so,
Homeowner case, it seems like it was more of an intention. He wasn't doing the wrong thing. He should have taken the right one.
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. It does seem like it's broader though of like were you being nice about it or mean about it? You know, like it's like just for the sake of getting through the facts today, so we can do the analysis tomorrow. Let's do the Rambam. So he's oops, I didn't even make the animation thing. Okay, so he says like this: judge every person favorably. Its meaning is that if there's a person whom you do not know, you don't know whether they are righteous, supposed to say, or wicked, okay? And you see him do an action or make a statement that if it is explained in a certain way, then it is good. And if it is explained in another way, then it is bad. Explain it in accordance with the good and don't think bad of him, okay? So is this, would you say this is the same or different than Rashi?
different.
Yeah, how so?
It applies. In this case, you have to have no knowledge of the person.
Yes. So Rashi's case, Rashi does not seem to care about who the person is. Rashi's just saying if whether the person is righteous or wicked, and if the action that they do can be interpreted for good or for bad, then you should interpret it for good. Okay. But now you're going to see sharp parameters here. Okay. If the person was known to be righteous, okay. And like Ramosha finds, okay, the nira lo maseh shekol tuchonosav yoru al hayosa maseh ra, and he it seems he did an action that all of its characteristics indicate that it was bad, like the two, because those were like Hasidim. The ein lahachriya boshu maseh tov ela bedohak rav meod uvefsharus rechoka. And you could only decide it was good through far-fetched reasoning and improbable scenarios. Okay. Sorry, you need to explain it for good. Okay. Oh, sorry. And remember, Rambam wrote this commentary on Avos in Arabic, and it was translated in Hebrew. So I like the second translation better, which I put as a footnote. Is an obligation to explain it for good. Okay. He says, as opposed to tsarech, he says chov. You're obligated to explain it for good. It's possible for it to be good. The ein mutar l'choshto, and it is not permissible to suspect him. Another translation says asur l'choshto. It's asur to suspect him. And regarding this, the sage said, good, then you get malchus, you get whiplashes, which I don't know how that works because usually you can't get whiplashes for stuff unless
Oh, I.
yeah, that could be. Yeah, I mean, it literally just means to suspect, but in this case, okay, so this is an example, like all the cases in the Gemara with the two rabbis fit into this, right? Because they had to like go out of the way to explain it. Okay. Likewise, if he was a wicked person whose evil actions are publicly known, and afterwards he is seen doing actions whose indications entirely point to it being good, and there's a very remote possibility that it is bad. So for example, you see Hitler feeding a puppy, seems good, right? You need to be on guard against him and not believe anything good about it, since there's a possibility it is for bad. Who talks to you? Don't believe him, for there's 7 abominations in his heart. So you have to assume like maybe Hitler was like poisoning the dog, you know? Okay, so that's for Russia. And then he concludes by summarizing the Avos. He says, but if he's unknown to you, like the first case you mentioned, and the action inclines to one of two directions, the two sides. And Kafak, again, gives a better translation. He says, and the action inclines to two sides, meaning it's ambiguous. It's kind of a contradiction in terms. You're obligated in the derech hachasidus, meaning it's like a derech hayachid obligation. Okay, like real Hasidim would do this. Okay, it's not like like most derech hayachid stuff is like an individual basis thing. You know, he's saying like this is like going to be without doubt, you should do this if you're on the derech hasidus. Okay, to judge him favorably, or like a well-known tzaddik. So do
Go like above and beyond.
you go if he does something that looks bad. Russia, if he's a well-known Russia, then the opposite is, even if you see him do something that looks really good, you interpret it badly, okay, as bad. And if he's not a Benoni, but if he's unknown to you and he does something ambiguous, okay, for a chassid, yeah. So this is a subtle thing that is easy to miss, right? Is the Rambam saying that you don't need to judge that person for good, right? It's not like an obligation. For the tzaddik, for an average person, sorry, a person who you don't know doing an ambiguous action, you don't need to judge him for good. But if you are in the derech havidan as kol ha'adam l'kav zechus, it means for Hasidim, this is what they do. Okay? Really quickly, Rambam is definitely a question of number 2 and number 3 for good or for bad. 3, what are the parameters and how far do you have to go? Right? Why do you have to judge them at all? Why not just say like, okay, I don't know what this person is doing, you know? Why specify every person? Did he answer that? Who is this coming to include? Yes. Exactly, because the rest of the tzaddik you know already, but the mishnah is coming to include the average person. That's why it says kol adam, you know? Who is this mishnah for? The chassid, right? So the average person would not need to judge a normal person, l'kav zechus, but the chassid should. Practically speaking, you do this on demand. It doesn't say, you know, for this. And what's the purpose of it? He also doesn't. Right. I mean, well, it sounds like from the worker worked out like, you know, a whole explanation for like why each of these excuses like was like a legit. Seems like random. Seems like not just stuff for you, but like anytime you see someone do something. seems sketchy. Yeah.
It's hard to determine whether.
Yeah.
For like the Hitler case, it's hard to distinguish what a person with the average person.
You're saying most people fall into the average person because only outliers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So most people would fall into this. Yeah. So that's another thing also is he doesn't say what you do about people who you do know, right? It sounds like for those people, you judge them based on your knowledge of them, right? It's only for people who you don't know and they do an ambiguous action. Right. But remember, Benoni Russia with how well do you know them? You know, it's like two criteria.
Russia very, very well, but you know him in a good way.
He's such a
Yeah. You can go along with that, but you know them as different as they act different around you.
It sounds like they're no, I don't know. It sounds like here's a case where you would have it. So in that case, it sounds like you still would have to interpret it for bad. But if you saw the Russia do something that you actually have clear proof is good, so you would not judge it for bad because you know they're of it. You know, like, oh, he's only donating to tzedakah so he can get like his name famous or something. Yeah. Okay, so let's think about this and then we'll try to answer these questions tomorrow.